Hey y'all, I am Dani and welcome back here to Summer Skye Gardens. So it's beginning of November. I'm here at the flower farm, specifically here in my grow room where I start all my seeds. And I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to talk about what all I'm growing by seed right now for spring and early summer flowers for next year. So I kind of want to take you through everything that I grow that I fall winter plant that will become spring flowers. This is the way that you really want to do it when you live in a warmer or hot environment where you have very mild winters. Getting everything in the fall really gives you a great head start. It gives those flowers the coolest opportunity, the longest amount of cool weather to get established. And then as it starts to warm up in the spring and the day length increases, all of those plants are going to shoot up and start blooming. So I wanted to kind of show you what I have growing right now in the grow room, how things look. And then I made a massive note sheet. I'm going to take you through every single thing I grow, whether it's by seed, by corm, by plug, by bulb, and kind of tell you when I do everything and how I grow it. Just a reminder, my flower farm is in Splendora, Texas, which is right northeast of Houston. I'm zone 9B, so we have really long, hot summers. As you can see, I'm slightly sweaty. Beginning of November, I was outside just collecting leaves. It's still in the 80s. Really hoping for a cool front soon, but yeah, we have like really long hot weather and then very mild winters. I think last year we got one frost mid-December, and then we got one freeze mid-January, which is kind of nice because I only had to cover stuff one time, but that just goes to show you, like, after that freeze we had in January, we never had another frost or a freeze after that. Now, things can change, but in general, our climates are getting warmer, and that's something to keep in mind as you go year to year. All right, so let's start on this shelf right here. So the first thing that I have here are bells of Ireland. Most people direct seed these. I've had some success starting them by seed indoors, about the same as direct seeding. So I just went ahead and tried a couple of trays here. I've also ordered some plugs. As you can see, the germination can be a little bit spotty, but not bad. Right here, I have some Mignonette, kind of same thing. I'm not ordering plugs on these, but I have started another tray. Right here, snaps, which are typically easy to grow by seed. Let's see. This is Cress, which is usually pretty easy to grow by seed. I have some more trays over here I've started. Here is my first tray of stock. Now you can see this variety, which is apple blossom. I don't know if the seeds were old or my mom actually planted these. I don't know if there was some user error, but you can see hardly any of these germinated, whereas like the champagne ones were fine. So I don't know about that, but have some more stock down here. Looking good. Probably in the next week or two, I'll finish setting up my fields outside and I can start to harden these off and get them planted if it's nice and cool. There's some more stock. Some more Snapdragons. These Snapdragons, which are a new variety I'm trying, Legend White. They're a lot smaller than the other ones, but they're growing steadily, so we'll see what happens. More snaps there. Now, as you can see, I only have like one tray on these shelves, two trays on these shelves, and that's just because I didn't need the space, but I can put up to 4 trays here and just do them lengthwise, and then 2 trays on each of these shelves. Oh my God, my cat is attacking my feet. Let's see. These are more trays of cress, and they are just now starting to germinate, which is great. You have to pay really close attention to these because you surface sow them and they will dry out easily. So you have to keep them wet, and I use a spray bottle. So these are all cress. Oreo, you're seriously in the way. I know you want pets, but I'm trying to get stuff done. I have another tray of Mignonette right there. And then the rest of these are stock, some more varieties. You can see now they're finally starting to pop up. I'll probably uncover these tomorrow. I try to, maybe not quite that one. I try to get at least like 2/3 to 3/4 of them germinating before I will uncover them. Like here's an example of one that I can uncover now. You can see like almost all of them have germinated. So that's when you want to take the humidity domes off. So let me go into another area and I'll talk you guys through everything I'm growing. All right, I came outside because the weather's nice and the lighting is a lot better, even though my background here is not the most attractive, but inside it was a little too dark. I've got my handy notes, so I'm going to take you through each plant, and as I go, I'm going to show you some pictures or videos right here so you can see what I'm talking about. The first one that I want to talk about is stock, and this may be my favorite or one of my favorite spring flowers. They're so beautiful. They come in so many different colors and they smell amazing. And you'd be surprised how many flowers actually don't smell. These smell wonderful. So I love including them in a bouquet. So stock I grow by seed, and I will start my seed inside anytime between October and November. And then after about 4 to 6 weeks, I will then transplant them outside. I try to pick a time when it's cooling off. It's not like super sunny, super hot. It's not super chilly. It's not going to rain. That's a good kind of time in general, a really temperate climate to get things transplanted. You can, of course, buy plugs for these, and there are some plants that I'm going to buy plugs for, but stock are really easy to start by seed. So I highly recommend that. So once you get them in, they will actually start blooming about beginning to mid-March for me here in the South in zone 9B. So if you're in a hotter area like me, you can probably expect them by March. If you're slightly cooler, it might be like later March or May. So everything I'm going to talk about is when they start to bloom and how long they last for me. If you're, slightly cooler, they'll probably come on a little bit later. They may last longer depending on how quickly you warm up in the spring. And then if you're in a hotter area, not too many of you guys in a hotter area than me, they should come up pretty similar. Sorry, I had to pause the video there for a sec. There was a super loud dump truck coming through, but yeah, so stock, they will start blooming beginning to mid-March and they'll last beginning to mid-May. So you get a good solid couple of months there, which I feel like is pretty good for where I live in South Texas. We have very short spring. So you're trying to just really maximize the amount of time you can get these cool flowers to bloom for you. Of course, because these are a one and done, they're really good to succession plant. So at least maybe try to get like 2 or 3 plantings of them so that hopefully you'll get a little bit of a staggering of blooms. Now for stock, you can plant them pretty close together. So I do 6 inches. I don't net them. They have really thick stems and they never get so tall that they flop over. And then if it is going to freeze, I will cover them. All right, the next plant is going to be snapdragons. Everybody pretty much grows snapdragons. They are a cool flower spring staple. They come in all kinds of colors. And the biggest thing you need to know about snapdragons is there are 4 classes. In any variety that you look up, you can look up which class it is. And typically class 1 are going to like the colder temperatures, shorter day length. And then you have 2, 3, all the way to 4, which are going to like the warmer, hotter days and longer day length. So you can kind of see where you may want to vary, what you're planting and when. Now, I take the recommendation of Lisa Mason Ziegler, who said, hey, pick some snaps from each class or a couple of the classes, plant them all together in the fall, and you'll get them to bloom at different times. And I have found that to be true. So just to keep it simplified, whatever snaps I'm going to grow from different classes, different colors, I start them all by seed. I do it in kind of like stock in October and November. And then I will transplant them in November or December. And then my first Snapdragons typically begin blooming about beginning to mid-March, and they will go through the end of May. So a little over 2 months. And that, like I said, that also depends on what class you're doing and how quickly it warms up in the spring. Some Mays we get hot very quickly and the snaps will start to peter out. Some Mays tend to kind of linger with the cool weather a little bit. That happened this past year, and I had Snapdragons until the end of May, even slightly beginning of June. But everybody who gets Snapdragons in the summer is definitely in a cooler environment, because once June hits, it is hot, and even the class 4 Snapdragons are not liking it. Now, Snapdragons will bush out, especially if you pinch them, which I don't, because I like to get those earlier tall blooms. You could pinch some of them if you wanted to kind of stagger your blooms a bit, but I plant them at 9 inches. Definitely net them. If you don't, you will regret it. I had some that I netted last year and some that I didn't because I got lazy, and I will never make that mistake again, because snaps, they will fall over. They get pretty tall, and once they fall over, they will start to grow like curved up toward the sun, and you will have an unusable stem. So definitely net them. Do it when they're younger so they can grow up through the netting. And yeah, if it's going to freeze, I will cover my Snapdragons. The next flower that I like to grow is Mignonette. Now, not a lot of people know about this, and I learned about it from Erin with Floret Flower. She showed it on her Instagram a few years ago, and I thought it was like so pretty. She classified it as more of like a wildflower, and yeah, the bees love it. It is one of the biggest bee magnets I grow here on the farm, but it has this like wispy whitish flower that just adds this really pretty small textural element. So I start seed in October, November. Once again, transplant November and December. It will start blooming about beginning of April, so it does take a little bit longer to bloom, and it kind of starts to bloom when all of my other wildflowers are blooming. It will end at the beginning of May, so it has a fairly short window. Now, last year I planted my Mignonette at 9 inches, but I think you could go closer to 6 inches. So I think either way you'll be fine. They don't need netting. They get nice and bushy, so that kind of supports all the stems. And you really don't need to cover these if you're getting a light freeze in kind of the mid to upper 20s, because like most wildflowers, they're used to getting some cold. Now, I can't speak for if it gets down to like the teens. I think for me, I probably would cover it just to be on the safe side, but that's certainly something you can probably look up if it gets that cold where you live. It almost never gets that cold where I live. The next flower I'll talk about is Statice. Statice is another cool flower staple, and for a lot of people it actually starts to bloom more toward the summer, but once again, hotter environment, it comes on with my spring flowers. It'll hang out like a teeny bit in early summer, and then it's pretty much done. But just like the other ones, I start it by seed. It's easy to start by seed. I start it in October, November, transplant November and December. It will start blooming at the beginning of April, and usually by the end of May, beginning of June, it's pretty much toast. Once it starts to get hot, the plants will actually start to look like they're kind of frying up and turning brown, and that's a good time to stop. Statice gets really bushy, a lot of stems, so you don't need a lot of plants. So I planted at 9 inches, and you don't really need netting. I do think it would help if you had a way to corral the outside, just because you may have some plants that fall over with a strong wind or some stems. So like last year, I didn't do any kind of support, and I did have some flop over, but honestly, I had so much Statice that it really didn't matter. So I think if you're growing a handful of plants, maybe kind of corral them with like some baling twine. But if you're growing a lot and you can handle losing a few stems or a few plants here and there, then I wouldn't worry about it. I do cover Statice if it's going to freeze. The next thing I love to grow is a bit of greenery called Cress, and specifically I like growing the emerald beads cress. There are a few other varieties. So I start this seed October, November, transplant November and December. It will start blooming at the beginning of April. Now, when I say blooming, it's going to form these little like seed pods. And that's when you want to cut it. As it goes, those seed pods will they may flower a little bit or kind of turn brownish. And at that point, it's getting to be a little too long. So usually these start beginning of May, and they're going to last about a month, month and a half to beginning or these start beginning of April, and they're going to last about a month, month and a half to the beginning to mid-May, and then they're going to kind of start to peter out. You can plant cress pretty close, and that will also give you longer stems with more of the branching at the top. So I plant them at 6 inches. You don't need netting. They're pretty strong plants, and I do cover them if it's going to freeze. Next one I want to talk about are bells of Ireland. Once again, this is a beautiful greenery that you can grow with your spring flowers. So I start seed by October, November, and then I transplant in November, December. Now, as you can see with bells of Ireland, like I showed you guys inside my grow room, starting it by seed can be sometimes difficult. I probably get like a 50% germination rate. So a lot of people like to direct seed it, but I know for me personally, I've tried to direct seed it and I've gotten about the same germination. So I don't really like direct seeding stuff because then I have to be outside keeping an eye on it, keeping it watered. We have crazy weeds here and it can just be kind of hard to get things up and running. So it's easier for me to start them indoors. But for my bells, I am actually ordering plugs. I like to order plugs from Farmer Bailey. They have a really great plug program, and so I'm getting those delivered in December. So the ones that I started inside, I'll get them transplanted out, and then I'll have more plugs coming in. And plugs are a great way to get started with something that's maybe hard to grow by seed, or something that you don't want to try to mess with, or maybe if you're new to growing something by seed, order plugs. So for me, my bells of Ireland come on in late March, and then they will start to kind of end at the beginning of May. Bells of Ireland get really bushy. They have a lot of stems, so you want to plant them at about 9 inches. They don't need netting. They're pretty sturdy because, once again, they're really bushy, and then I will cover them if it's going to freeze. The next thing I'll talk about is yarrow. So yarrow, if you're going to start it by seed, I'd probably do it on the earlier side. So in October, get it out in November. This is one that can be a little tricky to start by seed. I've had some success with it. So I am pro plug for growing yarrow. So for me, my yarrow starts to bloom at about the end of March and will kind of go toward the end of May. They get really bushy, so I would plant them at 9 inches, especially if you're going to kind of turn them into a perennial, which if you're in a warmer climate, you can do this. They will really bush out more over the following year, so you want to make sure you give them plenty of space. Now, some people grow them without netting, and I've definitely done this, but especially as the plants get bigger and older, the stems get taller and they will absolutely flop over. So I think it does benefit you to add in netting, and that's definitely something I will be doing this year. I don't cover yarrow. Yarrow, I have found, can actually handle pretty cold temperatures. Like I've had it when I had yarrow before at my house, we had a freeze come through a few years ago and it got down into the single digits and my yarrow was totally fine. So don't cover it. You should be fine growing it almost wherever you live. All right, the next thing that I like to grow is bupleurum. So it's kind of considered a greenery, but it does have these super cute greenish yellow little flowers that kind of dance when you add them in a bouquet. So bupleurum, you can start by seed. I will say personally, I have had trouble starting it by seed, whether that was indoors or outside. So I will actually be ordering plugs, and those plugs are going to get here in December, and I'll plant them out. But if you want to start it by seed, I would say once again in October, transplant it in November, or direct seed it in November once it's cooler. So the bupleurum for me definitely started blooming about the beginning of April and ended the beginning of May. So a much shorter window than a lot of the other flowers that I grow, but enough that I think it's still good to grow it. Now I've grown my bupleurum at 9 inches, but I do think they could be grown closer at 6 inches. So personally, that's what I'm going to try this year. They don't need netting, and I do cover them if it freezes. Next, we have poppies. Poppies are super fun, and there's a lot of different types of poppies. I will say The only poppies that I grow are breadseed poppies, and that's because I like to use the pods. The flowers are gorgeous, but poppy flowers last like a day or two. So they're great for an event, like a wedding. If you have them bloom like the day before, the day of, and you want to use them, cool. But beyond that, they lose their petals super fast. So I think they're fun to grow in like a wildflower area where they can just grow, go to seed, reseed themselves. Okay, wonderful. But as like a cut flower, they can be tricky. So just heads up on that. But the bread seed ones, they get huge and they form these like pods that are really cool textural elements in a bouquet. So that's what I like to grow. So you can try to start these by seed. Poppies usually do better direct seeded, or you can order plugs and get them in the ground between November and December. So the flowers start blooming at the beginning of April, and then as the petals fall off and the pod forms and matures, usually you'll start getting the bigger usable pods by the end of April. And then at that point, you have about a month where they're all going to really kind of bloom out, form their pods, and then kind of be done by the end of May. I grow these at 9 inches because they do put out a good number of stems. Now, I haven't grown these with netting, and most of them were fine. I did have some that flopped over with a strong wind or some stems that flopped over. I will say they keep growing straight when they fall, so I could still use the pods even though they were on the ground, but I did lose a handful that got kind of yucky if it rained. So I think either corralling them or using netting would be fine. I think for me this year, I'm going to try corralling them instead of actually using netting. And then since poppies are more of a wildflower type of flower, they can handle pretty cold temperatures. So here in South Texas, I don't cover them if I'm going to get a freeze. All right, the next thing I'll talk about is strawflower, and strawflower are super fun. If you haven't grown them, I highly recommend it, especially if you want to dry them. Excellent, excellent dried flower. So I like to start seeds again October, November, get them transplanted November, December. They will bloom starting at the beginning of April, and they will kind of go till the end of May, so about a month and a half. I do plant them at 9 inches because they can get really huge and bushy depending on the variety. They don't need netting. They're usually pretty strong, thicker stems, and I do cover them if it's going to freeze. All right, the next plant I'm going to talk about is one that is grown by seed, but almost nobody plants it themselves by seed, and that is Lisianthus. Can you start your own seed? Yes. They take forever to grow, and I don't know that the effort putting in to babysitting them for 4 to 5 months before you plant them out is worth it. So personally, I like to order plugs, and that's what I do here for all my Lisianthus. They like to get a cold start, even though they're considered more of like a summer flower. So I get them planted in January because usually by February, we're kind of already starting to warm up some. So they get a little bit of that cold start, and then they will start blooming in May and go through June. So I can get a good month and a half, maybe 2 months out of them. I have tried cutting them back and seeing if they'll give a second flush, but overall, most of them did not last through the summer to do that just because it's so hot. So, my opinion, I think you get a really strong, healthy cut on them, and then you kind of move on to other flowers. They can be planted really close, so like 4 to 6 inches, and you definitely want to net them. I did not do this past year because I was lazy, and I regretted it so much because I had a ton of flowers that flopped over and became curved or became yucky on the ground from like rain, and I definitely regretted that. So please, please net your Lisianthus, and you do want to cover them if it's going to freeze. All right, so the last 4 flowers I'm going to talk about are not grown by seed. They're grown by bulb or by corm. The first one that I want to talk about are daffodils or fancy narcissus. They are the first flower that start blooming here for me. Typically plant them in November, and they will start blooming by the end of January all the way through March. So it's fun to see them pop up, get that bright those bright colors of yellows and whites and creams as the other stuff starts to come up. But yeah, they're definitely the first ones to bloom on the farm. You can plant daffodils at about, I'd say anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, depending on if you're going to perennialize them or not. You definitely don't need to net them. And once they start growing, most of the bulbs and the corms are freeze resistant, but once the greenery starts popping up, and especially if there's any flowers, those can be a lot more sensitive to frost or freezes. So I will cover them if I'm going to get a freeze. Next, I have anemones. Anemones you plant by little corms, and I like to plant them in November, probably closer to Thanksgiving, because by then it has cooled off sufficiently. You can plant them a little bit closer at about 6 inches. So these are probably the second flower that start blooming. And one thing about anemones is the first blooms are going to be pretty short. So actually by the end of January, I'm already getting like short little blooms, which I just cut and toss or play with or let my daughters have. But by February, you're really starting to get those longer, more usable stems. They will peter out by the beginning of April. So they are a longer lasting spring flower as opposed to a few others that are planted like by the bulb or the corm. You don't need to net anemones. I will cover them if it's going to freeze. And one thing with them is I do add shade cloth. If the temperatures are starting to get up kind of to the mid-high 60s or higher, I will start putting on the shade cloth and kind of leave it there. They don't like to warm up too quickly. So if you do that, you'll still continue to get those longer, more usable stems. The next flower are ranunculus, and like anemones, you plant them by corm, plant them in November once it starts to get colder, so probably closer to Thanksgiving. They start to bloom a little bit after anemones, but kind of end about the same time. So they have a little bit of a shorter bloom window, and I find them to be a little more touchy-fussy with the cool weather to warm. They definitely like it to be colder. So I like to put shade cloth on them once it's definitely getting in the mid 60s to try to make them last. But they do have a much shorter window than the anemones. So they'll start blooming about mid-March and they'll be done by mid-April, maybe to the end of April, just depending on the temperatures. So you can plant them at about 6 to 9 inches apart. They don't need netting. I do cover them once it starts to freeze, and like the anemones, I do add shade cloth. All right, the last flower I'll talk about that are cool flowers that I grow here are tulips. Tulips are a little bit special. So they really prefer colder environments, and it can be difficult to grow them in the south, but you can be successful, and I have a whole video on how to grow tulips that I will link below. You need to chill them for at least 12 weeks, if not longer. So you can do this yourself. You can get the bulbs as early as possible, so maybe like September, and put them in the refrigerator or the cooler and then plant them out in December. Or you can find suppliers that will chill them for you. So I buy from Leo Burby. They're a wonderful American company, and they will chill your bulbs at no additional cost. So you put your order in the spring when your first tulips are starting to bloom. Go ahead and order your ones for next year, and they will chill them for you, and then they will ship them when they're ready to plant. So I get them in anytime from like beginning mid-December through the beginning of January. After the beginning or middle of January, it's really too late to plant tulips, because by the time they will bloom later on, like end of February, beginning of March, it's getting too warm. So we have a really short window here for tulips, but you can do it. Just get them cold, get them in the ground, and then they should start blooming by the end of January or the beginning of February and last for about a month. Now, tulips are special in that you can plant them super close together, like eggs in a crate. People plant them in the ground. I like to grow them in crates, so I put them as like little eggs in a crate. You don't need to net them. I do cover them if it's going to freeze. And just like the anemones and the ranunculus, I will definitely use shade cloth on these because, like I said, they do like colder temperatures. Now, one note here on the spring. So these are all the cool season flowers that I start in the fall and winter that then bloom in the spring to kind of early summer. My summer stuff, I actually start by seed in January and plant out, well, January or February, and then plant out kind of end of February to March. And I can get those summer flowers to start blooming in April. So there's this fun time of April and May where you're having a lot of the spring flowers that are still going, and you start to get like your early summer flowers, and you can get these really cool mixes of like zinnias and sunflowers with stock and snapdragons, and it's really fun to see that come together. But the cool flowers are pretty much done by the end of May, and that's like the perfect time when the summer stuff starts coming on. So you know, yeah, the winter you're really focused on spring flowers, but you have to keep in mind that summer stuff. And I'm already planning my summer stuff right now so that as I approach the holidays, I'm not having to worry about scrambling to figure out like what I'm going to plant and how much. Because come January, like beginning or middle of January, I will be starting seed on those. And I apologize if you heard a loud bullet-like noise. There's an oak tree that's above this house, which has a metal roof. And in the fall, it likes to drop giant acorns, which sound like bullets hitting the metal roof. Scares the crap out of me. All right, so that is it. I know this was a longer video, but I was trying to give you guys a lot of detailed information on what to plant, when to plant it, kind of how to grow it, and when you can expect flowers. Once again, this is all for me in my South Texas climate. I'm zone 9B. So, you know, things are going to vary a little bit different for you depending on where you live. But if you live in a warmer or hotter climate, basically what I want you to get the most out of this is that you've got to be getting stuff in the ground in the fall and the winter, because we have such milder, shorter winters in order to have successful spring flowers. Don't wait to plant at the end of winter, beginning of spring, like everyone up north does, because it will get way too hot too soon and you won't get any flowers. So fall planting is where it's at. But thank you guys once again for tuning in. If you have any comments, leave them below, and I will see you in my next video. So trash can, again, coming around. It's not even trash day. I don't know what's going on. It's really annoying because I'm trying to film and it's super loud. This is the country. It's supposed to be quiet. Boo, go away. It's another freaking truck. How many trucks are going to come through? Ugh, so loud.